What's up, y'all? I'm Will here with Schedulefly, and this is the Restaurant Owners Uncorked podcast, one of the highest rated hospitality podcasts in the world, brought to you by us at Schedulefly. We provide a very simple web-based restaurant employee scheduling software backed by legendary customer service. If you're on pencil and paper or Excel, or you're on some software with tons of bells and whistles and features you don't need or use, Schedulefly is the perfect place for you. Easy to use, point, click, and go, and we'll take great care of you. Schedulefly.com, free trial, check it out. Hey, what's up, y'all? This is Dan Reese, president of MilkShake Factory. Oh, we just spent an hour talking about milkshakes, and I can't wait to have one of these. But what we really talked about is a very successful family business, fourth generation family business that grew to 10 or 11 locations in and around Pittsburgh and is now franchising. By the end of 2026, they'll have 100 locations, but this is not a overnight fast growth churn and burn concept. This is a smart, measured, thoughtful plan of growth with really sharp operators. And I learned a ton from Dan, as will you, about what goes into planning to grow a concept like this. It's helpful to have a very simple concept, of course, so it's easier to scale faster. But one of the cool things about this is Dan is president of this business, but he's also a franchisee and just opened his franchise location in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So lots to learn here. Mouth-watering subject matter, but really, really good, well-run, sharp business. So whether you're in, an independent restaurant and or if you're in the franchise world, this is a great episode. I really enjoyed talking to Dan, and I'm hoping that we'll get to have him on again one day as they continue through their growth, because I think they have a really smart strategy. Thank y'all for watching. Thank you for listening. More episodes coming soon. See ya. What's up, y'all? Very cool opportunity today to speak with Dan Reese of MilkShake Factory, a growing brand that, they've got, I don't know, maybe 15 to 20 locations and growing. And Dan, just take a second and introduce yourself, if you would.
Yes, I'm Dan Reese, president of MilkShake Factory, the franchise organization, and relatively new to the franchising game. We've been in franchising for about a year and a half. We can get into all that, but the business has been around for a long time. We have 11 corporate stores in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So while we're an emerging brand of franchising, we're not some startup. So we can get into all that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know it's a fourth generation family business, so I want to talk about sort of the history and stuff. But tell me, there's one question that I ask everybody that comes on here, which is, when and why did you get into hospitality initially?
Yeah, it's a great question. My background, which we can get into later if you'd like, is actually in consulting, and then did private equity stuff, and then in consumer packaged goods, leading big brands. So that was most of my career, and then kind of fell into the retail hospitality space with MilkShake Factory back when it was one little store. And then when we opened that second one, kind of got a lot more serious about it in terms of how we went about it, a lot more sophisticated, and just seeing that consumer response. And, it's easier for us because we're selling milkshakes and chocolate. So it's a pretty fun business. People are pretty happy to be there. And it's just a really cool spot. It's fun to see the whole community come in. Everyone's happy to be there. No one's upset. And we tell all our franchisees that people walk through our doors with a smile on their face, right? They're either treating themselves or with their kids or their friends or whatever it might be. So it's a pretty cool thing that, life is chaotic and there's a lot of negativity out there. So to be a little kind of slice of positivity is something that's pretty fun. That we were just kind of leaning into, and then grew in Pittsburgh, and now to see growing all over the country with our franchise owners kind of maintaining that vibe has been really rewarding. So I'm a pretty social person, and just seeing everyone walk through the door and meeting people and everyone's happy, it's a pretty fun thing to be a part of. So it wasn't really some calculated career choice. They just kind of fell into it and said, hey, this is actually pretty cool, and here we are.
Well, it's they're so common. It's like, well, I was washing dishes at 14 and never looked back. And uh, so you've had a different, I asked that. No, I mean, of course, I read your LinkedIn bio. And so where are you in Pittsburgh?
No, I actually moved to Ann Arbor, Michigan, about 5 years ago. So
Okay.
from Pittsburgh. So I was in Pittsburgh for a long time. That's where I worked for Heinz and Kraft Heinz, and then met the Edwards family, the fourth generation chocolatiers that you mentioned. We grew a chocolate business. We can get into the whole family story. It's pretty
Yeah.
fascinating. And then I actually moved to Michigan for family reasons about 5 years ago. Pre-COVID. And then, when we went to franchise, we found our franchise development partners, Franworth, that just happened to be based here in tiny little Ann Arbor, Michigan. So our franchise entity is actually headquartered here, even though our corporate stores are in Pittsburgh. And then, even though I'm the president of the company, I'm also a franchisee. So I opened the local store here in Ann Arbor 2 weeks ago as a franchisee. So we can get into all that as well. It's been adventurous. I've learned a whole lot about what it means to be a franchisee and the support structure. But I figure, if I'm, talking about this business and how much I believe in it, I am literally putting my money where my mouth is, and I've learned a ton. And I think, culturally, I think a lot of our franchisees really like it that I'm in the trenches with them. So we can get into all of that as well. So yeah, you come to Ann Arbor, Michigan, we have a MilkShake factory officially open as of 2 weeks ago.
Dude, that is awesome that you are a franchisee oh man. All right. Well, first of all, are you from Ann Arbor? Like
Yeah,
where'd you grow up?
where I'm from is a loaded question. Born in Pittsburgh, Minneapolis, back to Pittsburgh, then moved to Michigan, high school in Michigan, spent 5 years in Chicago. I went to grad school at Duke, so spent 2 years down in your neck of the woods in North Carolina, and then back to Pittsburgh. And now we've settled in Ann Arbor. So I've moved every 3 to 5 years of my whole life. I have three little girls, and I like the idea of putting down some roots. And Ann Arbor is a very, very nice place to raise a family. So yeah, we've been here coming up on 5 years. I think this is the longest I've ever lived anywhere in my whole life, and no plans to leave. So where I'm from is a loaded question, but Michigan is home.
That's awesome. And so three little girls. How old are your daughters?
9, 7, and 4, and they think my fancy desk job. They say that I just yammer on the phone all day, which is not totally wrong. But now that I opened up my own store, they're like, they'll tell their elementary school friends that their dad drinks milkshakes for a living. Which there's a narrow
Oh,
window when our kids think we're cool, right? And I'm kind of in that right now, so I'm really trying to cherish it. I know it's fleeting. But the dad that has the milkshake and chocolate shop, it certainly could be worse.
oh, dude, you're probably like a hero to all the kids. Like my dad, like, oh my God, your dad owns the milkshake. So listen, you just nailed it, man. I mean, I've got a 20-year-old daughter, 17-year-old son, and a 15-year-old son. And I remember when they were like 9, 7, and 5.
Yep.
It's like you're like hero and you're cool and they hang on your every word. Now it's like,
Yep. Yeah, they laugh at my
leave me
jokes.
alone. You don't know anything. It's like,
I know.
actually, they come back though. They come back. Like my daughter's 20, so she went through it, and then now as they start to, they get off to they start to realize a little bit about the real world, just a slice. They're like,
Yep.
oh, okay,
Yeah.
maybe you do know something. Well, that would be fun to. I mean, I have to say, like, how cool must that be for your kids to have, a milkshake place that they can go to anytime. Well, then, okay, let's talk about that. So, um, tell me if you would, like, 4 generations, so chocolatiers and how that like transitioned over time into what y'all are doing. I just want to hear the backstory, and then I definitely want to get into you having your location there and what all is, what you've learned from that. But just give us the backstory on the family and how this all got going.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a pretty fascinating story. I'll try to hit the high notes. We can go into any detail if you'd like. But pretty classic, American immigrant story. The original generation immigrated from Greece in 1914, and with a lot of immigrants, specifically Greek immigrants, they didn't have a dollar to their name, and what they knew? They actually knew how to make candy and chocolate. So they founded a small little candy and chocolate shop in Pittsburgh, just as a way to literally make a life for themselves in America. And that was, way back in 1914. And then the business kind of took different twists and turns of the retail shop, and it was fundraising, and it was whatever else, different names and structures. But it was always a pretty small business around Pittsburgh. But the fourth generation, they grew up in the family business. I mean, they came home from the hospital as babies and went to the chocolate factory, I mean, literally. When the fourth generation, they actually all went after college, went to work in the White House in the George W. Bush administration. So away from the family chocolate business. The oldest sibling, Chris Edwards, was, very into politics, and he kind of wanted to do something other than just go right back to the family business. And they all ended up getting, jobs in the White House. They did all the presidential advance for George W. Bush. I mean, they flew around the world on Air Force One. I mean, 9/11, Ground Zero, Katrina. I mean, they have stories for days that you wouldn't believe. So they did that for a handful of years. And then eventually, when you work for a presidential administration, when that term is over, so is your employment with that administration. So when that ended, they were still pretty young at the time, and they decided, the pull back to the family chocolate business was pretty strong. So they literally went from the Oval Office in Air Force One back to the very, very tiny family chocolate business. I mean, I'm talking maybe a couple $100,000 in revenue. Like, I don't even know how they made it work. In this tiny little chocolate factory with little old ladies hand making chocolate. Their conference room table was a cardboard box flipped upside down. I mean, just real kind of entrepreneurial grit stuff. And to their credit, they humbled themselves and did it, and just kind of got to work. And the three siblings kind of balanced themselves out with different strengths. And, they got into a couple customers, I think, Dean and DeLuca and Saks Fifth Avenue, and some higher end, like box chocolate type customers. So they grew that business. And then their first kind of big break was actually getting the chocolate shop contract inside the Pentagon. So most people don't know that the Pentagon is actually, it's a massive office complex, and it's literally the most secure building in the world. So you can't just come and go for lunch like a normal office worker would. So there's actually a whole bunch of retail, food and shopping and all of this stuff inside the Pentagon. So they won the chocolate contract. So they opened up a chocolate shop inside of the Pentagon that was wildly successful. They supplied it from Pittsburgh. And then they got written up in the Washington Post, I believe, of, ex-White House staffers opened chocolate shop in Pentagon. It's this fun little story. And then the Costco buyer in the Northeast saw it and said, whoa, like, this is fascinating. I have to meet these people. So the three siblings, the fourth generation, got a meeting with Costco, never have done anything in consumer packaged goods, never done anything with Costco, never done packaging or pallet or any of that. And get into that meeting, the Costco buyer is like, what do they do best? They say it's their grandpa's caramel. Long story short, they co-create this item, this pretzel caramel chocolate cluster item called Snappers. And they were approved for 4 tractor trailer loads of volume on the spot, which, if you think about the volume of little old ladies hand making chocolate, like by tray, right? To like, wait a minute, we have 3 months to fill 4 tractor trailer loads of volume. Like, those of you in the space can appreciate how ridiculous and overwhelming that is. So, and again, this is before I was involved. So I give them all the credit in the world. Just real, again, entrepreneurial grit. I mean, they hand welded chocolate enrobing lines. And, if you miss that first order with Costco, is one strike and you're out. You can't screw it up. And it's truly the opportunity of a lifetime. So as that truck was pulling away, they're like setting the last bag on it and made the delivery with, 5 seconds to spare or something crazy. And then sure enough, the product just sold like crazy. And then in Costco, you can actually grow very, very quickly because you can expand in clubs, and then you get region-wide sales, and then there's 8 regions around the country. So it's just expanding like wildfire in Costco. And that's right when I kind of came on they kind of, caught the great white shark, if you will, and this insane growth of essentially zero revenue to, millions of dollars of revenue, but no real business fundamentals in place and no real structure. So that's when I came involved, and we ended up growing that business from essentially zero to about $50 million of revenue over the course of 6 years. So we were in the Inc. 5000 fastest growing companies in America for 6 straight years, I believe. So I brought a whole bunch of people with me, and we grew that primarily on the back of Costco. That was our biggest customer by far. So I had a great run with the chocolate company. And so we exited that business a handful of about 3 years ago. And MilkShake Factory was when I started with them back in 2015. So coming up on a decade ago, which is crazy to say. It was just their mom's little retail storefront in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And it was originally just a chocolate shop. So the little old ladies would make the chocolate and then they would sell think of the chocolate shop as the million little SKUs of all the little chocolate pieces and whatnot. And, their mom, third generation, great business person. I mean, she could sell you anything, right? You'd walk in and say, I don't really want anything. And you walk out with like a grocery bag of chocolate. Like, like one of those people, right? Very, very gifted. And so it was a great business, but if it's not Valentine's, Easter, holidays, being in the chocolate business, especially with a little retail storefront, pretty tough. Like, it's not that many people buying salted caramels in July, right? So Dana, who's the founder of the MilkShake Factory, fourth generation, she came up with the idea as a undergrad college project of, hey, what if we started scooping milkshakes in the summer? I mean, truly no downside. The worst case is we don't sell any and we're already not selling anything. So why don't we give it a go? And then they're absolutely obsessed with product quality, again, as chocolatiers. So not shocking that the milkshakes that they came up with were quite good. And it really started to catch on. And then you started to realize, like, wait a minute, we're selling a lot more milkshakes than we are chocolate. So the business used to be all chocolate and no milkshakes, and that mix gradually shifted over time. And then I believe in around 2008 is when they rebranded, the mom's chocolate shop. It was called Chocolate Celebrations to MilkShake Factory. So the soul of MilkShake Factory is actually the mom's old school chocolate shop. And you can go in today. It has this red tin ceiling. It has like this really cool, like old school vibe. It's very, very different from most of our stores. So that was this one little retail storefront. I put the three kids through college. It was successful, but it was one store, right? And very, very just kind of mom and pop vibe. And then kind of the big kind of step change moment for MilkShake Factory was in 2016 when PNC Bank came to us. They were building their new global headquarters downtown Pittsburgh, like this LEED certified, really fancy, skyscraper for Pittsburgh. It's 30 stories, but very nice building. And they didn't want just another Starbucks or whatever in their ground level retail. So they came to us and said, we'd love for you guys to do a MilkShake Factory in our ground level retail. And we were so busy growing the chocolate business. I mean, we said no to them, probably 10 times. Like, thank you, it's great, we're flattered, but like we just can't right now. But eventually that offer kept getting better and better. And like any tortured entrepreneur, you sometimes have trouble saying no. So we kind of begrudgingly said yes and opened up that. Now it's kind of a flagship MilkShake Factory location. And that's where, we had architects and actually had a logo and got a lot more buttoned up about just the operation and whatnot. But so, we spent way too much money opening it up. The operation was, very, very archaic in hindsight. But it was a beautiful store. And then when we opened those doors in 2016, that consumer response was like nothing I've ever seen. And I've led a lot of big brands. We can get into my background later, but that was kind of one of those, you kind of just pause and say, whoa, okay, that's noteworthy. I mean, lines out the door, around the block to come to MilkShake Factory. So that's when we kind of realized we had something. And then, we opened up 6 more stores around Pittsburgh, urban, suburban, college stores, et cetera. COVID happened. Obviously, that was tough for all of us in the restaurant and retail world. It actually, in hindsight, I think kind of made us better, a little more focused, tightened things up operationally and financially. And then opened a couple more stores post-COVID. And then really we were at this position of, we have 11 stores in Pittsburgh, and technically 10, one is licensed, and great business. So do you want to have, hey, we've got these 11 stores in Pittsburgh, wonderful business, obviously just, local/regional. But again, there's a whole bunch of us that have been with this brand a long time, and no one's doing what we're doing. And all of us really believe in it. So then you're like, okay, then you kind of have that growth question of how do you grow, et cetera. And, expanding via corporate development was on the table. It's pretty capital intensive to do that. And then if you kind of get into the economics of doing that and the economics of raising money and giving away a whole bunch of equity, et cetera, wasn't overly appealing to us. So then we started looking at franchising, and I'll be honest, like, so we're all business people, we're not franchise people. And I'm almost embarrassed to say I was a little dismissive of franchising just because I didn't know. But we spent most of 2022 just educating ourselves on franchising and what it is, and why it works and how to do it and how not to. And we at least were smart enough to know what we didn't know, and we wanted to find kind of the best brand dev partners to help us with it. You're like, we're the business people, we know all about the product in opening these stores and running them, but being an
Yeah.
emerging franchisor is a whole different animal. I equate it to like walking through a field of landmines, and it's really easy to step on one, right? Even if you're a
Hmm.
smart, sophisticated operator, it's just a different game, right? So yeah, we ended up partnering with Franworth. John Rachi is the founder of Franworth, very accomplished franchise executive, wonderful human being. His team is fantastic, and they're based out of here in Ann Arbor. So we partnered with them at the beginning of 2023, so a year and a half ago ish, and then we've been in market awarding units for a little over a year. And we've crossed the 100-unit awarded number, which is great. So we've seen a lot of momentum just from wonderful people around the country. We're looking for great operators and great markets. We're being really disciplined about that. We say no to more people than we say yes to. So just because you're excited about MilkShake Factory and you're financially qualified does not mean that we award units to you. So we can get into all that of how we think about growth and whatnot. And we're getting stores open, and we're kind of on the path. So a lot of work to be done, but we've come a long way.
Man, that's awesome. Okay, well, so how many will you have open by the end of this year?
There will probably be 4 or 5 open because we're looking at, ideally like 9 months, but realistically 12. Site selection is really that variable on the front end from, signing a franchise agreement to getting open.
Yeah.
Mentally, I tell people about a year, and if some people will say, "Oh, why does it take so long?" And really, it's a function of site selection in real estate, because I tell our franchisees it's the one thing you can't screw up, right? You can hire a bad GM, you can have the bad marketing program, whatever, and that might make for a long day or a long week. But if you sign a 10, 20-year lease, and we think about this business long term, right? And just rushing into the first site that's available because you're rushing to get open, I think, we're trying to be a little more disciplined in that. So I'd much rather, wait. You can't wait forever, right? You can't be in site selection for years, but, trying to just be really smart and make sure that we feel really, really good about the sites that we're selecting, because it's the one thing you can't fix if you screw it up. So yeah, we'll be at like 4 or 5 this year. We're just getting open because, again, we're on that kind of year time frame. And then obviously next year and the subsequent years, it will ramp up considerably.
How long? So you've got 100 signed. Like, when will you have 100 open?
100 open. It'll probably be, actually just updated some numbers today, hopefully around, in 2026.
I
Yeah,
gotcha.
so
Okay.
it'll be, we're growing fast, and there's no secret as a franchisor. You got to hit royalty sufficiency and get stores open. Otherwise, that's how the model works, of course. But, you take on too much too soon. And I just went through it myself, opening my own store. It's a lot, right? And the stakes are high, and it's easy to make mistakes. And we're really obsessed with supporting our franchisees. I would say overly supporting our franchisees, especially in these early stages. I'd rather, I kind of view my role as always turning the dials of growth of, yes, we need to grow, but not reckless growth.
Yeah.
We take pride in not being trendy. Like, I have the most respect for the businesses out there that have been around for 30, 40, 50 years. Like, that's how we view MilkShake Factory. So
Yeah.
I don't care too much about the fastest growing brand of 2024 or whatever. And again, that's good too. I'm not saying anything negative about those brands, but we try to zoom out and trying to really
You're,
build something of substance.
yeah, you seem like, so you were with Heinz at one point. I'm hearing a lot of, like, I don't know, like, I think of, like, you're a Berkshire Buffett guy, it seems like. Like the way you're talking, like, in the brands you've been associated with. It's like, we don't have to have it's not this like 3 to 5 year massive trajectory, sell out and move
Yep.
on thing. It's like, we're building a brand that we want. I mean, the family's been doing it for 4 generations. You're building for the long term. And those are the best businesses, the ones that are not the shiny new flashy, just like solid fundamentals,
Yep.
great management team, sounds like you're building a good moat, like you're doing something unique. Let me ask you this. Well, a couple things. One is I want to, before I forget to mention this, I have a good buddy, Trey Morgan. He does real estate development, lives here in Charlotte, went to Duke Business School. And I was like, hey, man, I'm interviewing this dude. Do you know him? And he's like, no. But he said, tell him that y'all or your franchisee is looking at one of his sites in Beaufort, South Carolina. I
Okay.
guess you may have somebody down there.
Yep.
So,
We do.
yeah. Which brings me, because I'd be happy to connect you with Trey, but I want to ask you about that because you talk about how important real estate site selection is, and that's the one thing you can't get wrong. So how do you how do y'all help your franchisees just make sure they're nailing that? Is it data? Is it boots on the ground? Is like, what do you do?
Yeah, it's all of the above, right? So, every single site comes across my desk. Every single site comes across our founder, Dana's desk. And then we have national brokers of record, right? I think the brokers are really the ones that have the relationship with our franchisees, and they're the ones pounding the pavement. I always tell our franchisees, like, if your broker is just refreshing the commercial real estate listings, they're not doing their job. Like, you can do that, right? I really want depth of local knowledge, right? I want to know, what new construction's happening, what leases aren't being renewed, all that real deep knowledge of a particular trade area. And the good brokers have it. That's how they live and die. And then the bad ones don't, right? Because that's really, especially in some of these really competitive real estate markets that are tight. I would put Charlotte in that bucket. If you're not playing that kind of that real deep knowledge game, you don't even realize you're missing all these best spots because all these other brands, it's the same thing like the housing market, right? Like, there's people know of things that are coming up and they don't hit Zillow, right? They're already gone. So we start there, and then, we talk once we get into LOIs and it starts to feel a little more real. There's no such thing as a perfect location, right? So for us, the sweet spot's kind of in that like 14 to 1700 square feet. My Ann Arbor store is a touch bigger. We can go a touch smaller too, but for us, it's a lot of we want to be where all the action is, right? So pretty common when you think about retail businesses. We love restaurant co-tenancy for all the obvious reasons. Big anchor restaurants, QSRs. I love grocery anchored. Street visibility is a huge deal for us because our name works crazy hard for us, right? So, in Ann Arbor, Michigan, no one's heard of MilkShake Factory. I put my sign on my front and my rear of my building months ahead of opening, and the buzz was crazy. Like, you've never heard of it, and you at least know that we sell milkshakes, and milkshakes are like a fun thing that people are really excited to talk about. So literally just being able to see the sign from the road. And I know that sounds like so obvious and simple, but as many of those boxes as we can check as possible where, we're a destination, people will bring their family, file the kids in the car and we're going to MilkShake Factory, but also, hey, you're going out to eat and you come out and you look up and you see MilkShake Factory, you're walking out of a movie or you're coming out of the soccer fields or whatever, and you see it. Hey, do you want to swing by MilkShake Factory? More impulsive, right? So we want to make sure we're kind of checking both of those boxes. But again, there's no such thing as a perfect location, right? There's its size and its parking and its co-tenancy and it's of course the economics of the lease, and right. And then at the end of the day, what I tell our franchisees when you're signing a lease, you're fundamentally making a bet on revenue, right? So we like occupancy expense to be around 8% of revenue. So, and this is the hard part because there's no way to know, right? So when you sign that lease, total occupancy expense divided by 0.08, and that is fundamentally the bet you are making on the revenue of your MilkShake Factory. Now, again, if that number ends up being 10% instead of 8, are you sunk? Of course not. But that's where, that's how we think about it. And then for us, the same for a lot of retail businesses, if you're really driving that top line, that's where you really start to see, some pretty significant profitability. So, if you have a very low unit volume business, there's only so much blood you can squeeze from a stone from a profitability perspective, right? Whereas if you're really driving that revenue, especially in our model, we don't need that much more labor to drive an incremental 2, 3, 400K of revenue. So that incremental revenue is extremely profitable. So again, you can't be reckless, and usually the best real estate's more expensive, right? So the stakes get higher and higher. But you kind of want to play to win, as opposed to how franchisees say, hey, I found this really great spot and it's tucked in the corner of some strip center and it's 16 bucks a foot. And you're like, well, there's probably a reason it's 16
For a
bucks a
reason.
foot. And maybe you want to be a little careful. So anyway, long-winded answer to say is we take it super seriously. We have a lot of people involved, and you kind of just rack and stack those variables in data and everything else. And then eventually you kind of hit a point where you hold hands and jump, but at least, we try to make sure we're all holding hands together with our franchisees.
Tell me, like, what do you, because this is, well, it's not uncommon with the best run organizations, but you certainly see this done the other way. But you're very selective about your franchisees. Another indicator, like when I start thinking about things I would bet on if I were an investor, like, boy, you better be like, because you don't want to just get somebody that's willing to pay that royalty and has the financial means to do it, because that's myopic, because the long run, if they're not the right one, that just does more to damage the brand than any money they ever invested. So what is it that y'all are looking for, and how does your franchise partner, was it Fran work?
Yep.
Fran, like, how do they help, connect those dots for you?
Yeah, so I mean, they have many, many decades in franchising in terms of just setting up the structure of franchise development and the discovery day process. And we work with the Repum group as well as our franchise sales organization, also based in your neck of the woods, helping us through all of that. So we're trying to really rely on a lot of experts who have been there, done that with many, many brands for a very, very long time, where that kind of skips us ahead of the line, as opposed if it was just me going through a franchise sales process, like, starting from scratch, I'd be making all sorts of mistakes. So trying to find the best partners is a great way to at least kind of, lower the overall risk of making big mistakes. And then, I think for the franchisees, we try to be really transparent. Like, we're not salesy people at all. I don't want to talk anyone into anything. If anything, it's the inverse. And now, me being a franchisee, I'm like, I'm going to shoot you real straight. Like, this is work. If you say the words passive income at any point in our franchise sales process, you're out. You're gone. I don't care how much money you have. I don't care how many units you want. I don't care what market you're in. I don't care about your background, right? Where, I think what I really like is people with, ideally experience, specifically in F&B, and they're looking to kind of round out their portfolios or add to their portfolios or diversify to a different brand. And it's not exclusively that. And we have a lot of other folks that are kind of first timers and corporate refugees, et cetera, which we can talk about. But we do really well with those folks. And because, if they're running a QSR or a full service restaurant with hoods and, full teams and wait staffs, and I'm sure, you have a lot of guests that operate those businesses, and hats off to them, truly. Like, it's so impressive to me to be able to run a business that complicated. And so when people can run that and have a portfolio of, X number of whatever brand, they come in and see MilkShake Factory and they're like, whoa, this is a really unique brand.
Yeah.
This is so simple. And then with simplicity drives scalability, right? And then, hey, I could open, X number of these, et cetera. So that's kind of, that profile I like a lot, because they know what they're getting into, right? They've been there, done that. They've maybe been they kind of have some battle wounds from F&B, but we're kind of the food and beverage solution for the people that don't want to do F&B. So Franworth does not partner with F&B companies. Repum does not partner with F&B companies, and they both made an exception for MilkShake Factory because we're so simple. And even in the franchise broker world, a lot of these candidates will come in and say, hey, I'm looking to buy a franchise, anything but food and beverage. And then we've actually had some wonderful franchisees come into our network, say anything, no food and beverage, but take a look at MilkShake Factory. And then they kind of fall in love with it. So we have a pretty diverse group of franchisees. Again, the corporate refugees, existing franchisees of other brands, et cetera. And at the end of the day, this is a people business, right? And we're very transparent about that. And we want people they're kind of eyes light up. They're like, yeah, people, like, I want to, I want to build my team. I want to build culture. I want to connect with the community. That's that's really the biggest task for our franchise. Like, we're going to teach you everything you know about selling milkshakes and running the operation and everything with that. But I can't, I can't teach you how to, I'm not going to hire your team for you, right? Obviously. So we want people. And that's probably the number one thing. And then also people that are willing to, humble themselves and spend a bunch of time in the store and learn the business and really grow with it and make it a priority. This is not, I have a demanding corporate, I'm a VP in corporate, whatever, and, I'm looking to open milkshake factories on the side. Like, I just went through that process, not setting you up for success, right? Like, luckily, me being a franchisee has a lot of overlap to my day job. But if I had some different job trying to open a milkshake factory, or really, this isn't specific to milkshake factory. Anytime I see franchises being sold as passive income, I don't care if you're in home services or F&B or anything else. I don't know. It's a big red flag. So any listeners out there, if you hear that, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. So that's my opinion.
I completely agree. Dude, you're a fascinating guy because here you were with these big brands and private equity and a Duke MBA, but I'm hearing all the grit, roll up your sleeves, not like hard work, like get in there. And then here you literally went and opened a franchise. So I have to I don't know, man. Like, there's not many people that marry all of that into like. Well done, dude. I'm very fascinated with the fact that you opened your own. What was it, because you felt like you really needed to have that experience so that you could sort of like lead and relate and empathize by example?
Totally. That's a huge part of it. And, I had all my, my fancy executive jobs and the $2 billion Kraft Heinz condiments portfolio I ran, the Fortune 150 companies and blah, blah, blah. But I've never like been in the trend. You hit a point where you're kind of elevating your career, and you actually, I call it detached leadership, right? So you have all these
Yes.
leaders that are up in their ivory towers. And for our business, all the actions in the stores, right? That's where
Yes.
consumers are judge and jury. Do they like our products? How is our service? Is our store clean? Is it whatever it might be? And when I led brands like Heinz Ketchup, that battlefield was the grocery store, right? You're in the aisles, right?
Right.
And then if you never spend time as an executive to where the action is, you don't get it. Like, I don't care what anybody says, you just don't. So that's where, I wanted to really go through that. And then for me too, the idea of getting the stores open, and it's my job to create a robust support structure for our franchisees. So what better way to go through that whole
Yeah.
process? It's very obvious where my gaps were and what's good and what's not and what needs tweaked. So that was a big part of it. And I learned so much, like, truly, and I'm really grateful for that. I always love to keep learning. So it was a very unique challenge. My team they were laughing a little bit when I'm, unpacking boxes and I'm at the dumpster and I'm doing all this stuff, and I'm all stressed out about these tiny little details, and I'm making 4 trips to Lowe's in a day. It's all that little stuff that all the entrepreneurs out
Yeah.
there do. So and even going through training, I've been in this business for a while, and I'm there learning how to run the POS. And there's a funny story from training when I'm awkwardly fumbling through the POS, and some very sweet old lady goes, "It's okay. We all have to start somewhere." She was like very patient with me, which was very funny. So yeah, I think the main part was learning, and then two, I think just relating to our franchisees and the struggles and the stresses, right? So when they're 3 weeks out from opening and they're feeling it, right? Like, oh, construction's late and permitting this, and they sent me the wrong fridge or whatever's going on. I'm like, I know, I've been there. Like, I feel you. It's hard, right? Like, I think that's really important. And then it's not charity either. Like, it's my own money. And I think Ann Arbor is a great market. So it's an investment. Like, I'm not shy as a franchisee. I intend to make money too. In 2 weeks in, I mean, we haven't done any marketing, and I'm blown away by the demand, like totally blown away, where I'm actually pumping the brakes on foot traffic and revenue just to make sure my team doesn't get crushed. So, the marketer in me, I've done all the Super Bowl commercials and all the big marketing programs. I'm dying just to shout from the mountaintops that we're open. But we try to be really disciplined. And again, we want to be around for a long time. It's not setting a 1 month sales record, right? So, yeah, learning a bunch in relating to our franchisees. And then I think even culturally, it's pretty cool where, our franchisees, we're still small, obviously, but they all fly to the different grand openings, and we have these calls, and they're just, I don't know. I genuinely like spending time with our franchisees, and then they network with each other, and that's by far the most fun part of the process for me is just kind of building that and helping all these folks that I really respect and like.
How are you balancing? I mean, so you've got the location and you're a
Yeah.
franchisee and you got to do that, and then you got this pretty important job within that. Like, how do you balance all that?
Yeah, it's been hard, especially, for those of you that have done it, call it the month leading up to opening and then the month after it's just, I call it a pinch point. You plan to do things and you're like, yep, that's going to be a pinch point. And then you're in it and you're like, yep, here we are. And it was even more than I thought, right? In terms of just sheer, there's not enough hours in the day. And again, I still am, I try to stay very active and I want to be here for my family. And, there's only so much time to go around. So it was a lot. My wife is a saint. I will say that. She probably won't listen to this, but I say that anyways. And trying to navigate it. And, I'm trying to structure my team in a way that, of course, the store has to run without me, right? Like by definition. So, my store is basically in my office. I'll set up in the corner. I'll take all these calls and do all my kind of president activities from the store. And then it's very insightful, right? I'm there, I'm solving problems, I'm helping the team, I'm answering questions. And I'm also just observing, right? Seeing what's going on, seeing what's working, seeing what's not. But I think I've stepped foot inside my store and spent hours there. I mean, literally every single day for the last month.
Yeah.
Day in, day out,
Yeah.
nights, weekends, whatever. But even trying to make it fun, like my girls that we mentioned earlier, like they, just brute force work that needs done. I mean, they walked in and helped me break down boxes for 4 hours, and they thought it was so fun, right? So like, you're trying to fold other people in, and we've had friends come and help, and it's kind of been, the dad in me kind of likes there's some lessons of hard work to be learned in that as well.
Sure.
Which I like, because even opening the store for especially young kids, it's like a tangible thing of like, it's work, right? They don't understand what my actual work is.
Totally get it.
So
Yeah.
that's been kind of a rewarding thing. And, maybe, the dad in me hopes maybe they're retaining maybe some of those life lessons as they're, breaking down boxes at the dumpster or whatever not glamorous thing they're doing.
Well, that's really cool. And I guess so Ann Arbor, so University of Michigan's there. Did you kind of you kind of opened when school got
Yep.
started? Is that about right?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
exactly right. Yeah, this weekend is the first football weekend where, the stadium capacity is larger than the population of the town. So our little town, doubles or triples in sizes every football weekend. So yeah, gearing up for some pretty heavy demand on Saturday.
How does it, so a college town like that, when your population doubles so much on game days and football days, and then, I mean, just the population increases massively during the school year, what does it look like in the summertime?
Yeah, it's still a great community. I mean, the university itself employs, I don't know, 30,000 people or something. So it's by far the biggest
Okay.
employer.
Yeah.
So it's a really kind of stable local economy. And, I would say half the people I know work for the university in some way, shape, or form. So yeah, it's very clear, in terms of traffic and the grocery store, oh man, the students are back, right? But it always makes one of the best places to live and best places to raise a family list. So it's not like it's not crazy. I mean, again, we'll see what sales look like over the course of the year, but I don't, and I'm not necessarily like right on campus either. I'm probably 7-10 minutes away, so it's almost a little bit more of like a hybrid suburban type location, which is a lot more just families and kids, and I've got elderly people. I mean, you name it. Most people like milkshakes. And students don't hurt. Don't get me wrong. Now we have a store in Pittsburgh, right on the University of Pittsburgh campus, and you can look at those daily sales, and exactly when the students come back, and the day that they leave. So it'll go from one of our softest stores to our best stores, like literally overnight, and that just happened last week when the students came back. So that dynamic exists. I don't think it'll be quite that pronounced in Ann Arbor, but I do think it'll be pretty obvious when it's a home football Saturday.
So you have a lot to balance. You got a family, you got young kids, you got a franchise, got a big big important job. You stay active. You say, what do you do to stay active? How do you take care of yourself?
Yeah, so I equate it to like I'm like one of those breeds of dogs that need a lot of exercise or I eat the door frame. Like it's just something I do. I've worked out every single day at a very early hour. I don't miss the day probably for 20 years straight. It's just something I do. Everyone
When do you
says
get up?
usually around 4:30 most days.
Uh,
Because that's when the day, you know, if I don't, I've learned, especially with kids and job, if you don't, that early morning, that's the only time that exists. And again, you could do late at night, but that I'm not a night owl. So people are like, oh my gosh, how do you get up so early? Like, ask me what time I go to bed. If you text me at 9:01 p.m., you're not getting a
you're
response.
out.
So it's
Yeah.
yeah, trying to prioritize sleep and take care of myself and you know, good mental and physical health and all that. So yeah, I run a whole bunch, you know, I run, you know, 15 marathons and ultras and all sorts of stuff. Try to, you know, lift weights and stay in good shape and all that. So we've got I'm in my 40s now, and there's a group of us training for 1 mile race. So you know, just trying to keep it interesting. A bunch of us old guys trying to see what we can do on the track. You know, obviously we're not you know, none of that's paying any bills, but we have fun with it, and it's a way to you know just stay active and get out there.
Well, I would argue that it's a paying the bills is a byproduct of taking good care of yourself. I mean, that's like so much flows downstream from
Does
taking good care of yourself and staying active. I mean, I'm 50 now, and I can promise you, like, I'm very dialed into that, and it makes a big difference,
huge.
especially now that you're in your 40s, man. It's like you really need to. You have a lot of responsibility. It's a great outlet. Do you so you mentioned ultras, like I and you mentioned 4:30, and as soon as I hear 4:30, I think Jocko Willink. Do you know who Jocko
Yep,
is?
yep. I know who he is.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, because he does his like watch, like you know, he always posts his for like whatever. But I follow him a little bit, and then David Goggins, who does you know does all the ultra stuff or whatever. They're
Yep.
sort of like the dudes when I need a little extra kick in the
Yeah, a
ass to
little kid.
motivate
So yeah,
myself.
they're pretty intense. You know,
They're
I'm probably
pretty
yeah, I'm
intense.
probably not quite that intense of just absolutely you know,
No.
torturing myself. But you know, I'll get up super early. My poor team gets emails from me, and I'm like, you don't have to reply. You know, I'm sorry for emailing you at you know 5:01 in the morning. But you know, I try to do you know a little bit of work. No one's bothering me, and then get a good workout in before my girls get up and do the whole you know preschool routine and all of that. And you know, each day is a little different, but you know, it's very obvious if I didn't do that, I would not like just mentally, physically, I just
Yeah.
need even like one day if I don't, I'm like I'm
You're
sort of
off.
I'm just off, right? And
Yep.
that's why I don't miss a day. And it's just something it's just habit for me. It's not even a choice. It's just something that I do.
Just how you roll.
Yeah.
Yeah. For sure. For sure. Uh, I see a bunch of books back there behind you. Do you read a lot of business books or read for pleasure, or do you
Yeah, a
even
little
have
bit of
time to read
both. I
anymore?
mean, I aspire to be a reader. You know, I know, you know, I would
Yeah.
love to read, you know, 50 books a year or whatever. I joke sometimes that, you know, at night I'll read and then literally I'm one page in and I fall asleep.
Out. Yep.
And then the next night I'm like, wait a minute. Then I reread that page and it's been a week and I'm like, how have I made 3 pages of progress? So I'm usually very tired by the time I open a book. But no, I'll read pretty diverse stuff. I mean, random fiction stuff. My wife's a big reader, so she'll funnel the good ones my way. You know, some of the business books I like. I recently just read Setting the Table by Danny Meyer, you know, Shake Shack
Boom.
founder. I mean, that was
Yes.
like, again, I think some of the business books get a little watered down and kind of this recycled, like rah business stuff, which isn't really my thing. But, you know, Danny Meyer's book, I mean, obviously, what he's done is extraordinarily impressive and just really great lessons on culture and management. And so, yeah, I would encourage all of your listeners to read that. And even if you don't, Google the salt shaker example. There's a little snippet from that book about a salt shaker and how to manage a team, specifically in the confines of a restaurant. I think it's brilliant and it's simple and it's spot on. So that's one that's on my nightstand right now that I really enjoy. So yeah, try to mix it up.
Most recommended book on this podcast over the years
Really? Okay.
uh by a oh dude, I
Didn't know
can't.
that.
I
All
mean,
right. Well, I guess I'm in good
so
company then.
you're in great company. I can't. I mean, basically everybody. If we get into reading, if I bring that up or whatever, and we talk about like in somebody is into that, and we talk about hospitality. I mean, like setting the table. It's almost like the Bible for hospitality. Like it's so well regarded. It's been around for a really long time because I mean, I'm telling you, we started recording podcast episodes in like 2010 or 11 or something. And it was coming up then because I bought my copy then. I'm like, what is this book? And I kept hearing about it and I was like, oh, now I know why.
Totally.
So
yeah, when my GM started, I super excited to have you. Obviously a very important hire for my Ann Arbor store. I gave her the book. I said, your homework is your start date's next week, read this book, right? And that's just, even if she retained, some of those lessons, super, super impactful. So that's cool to do.
So I know we have I want to wrap up with this point because I think it's so important. I'm glad you brought up that book. And you said something earlier that I feel like sometimes gets missed these days in the world of hospitality. That book was written a really long time ago, and you just read it recently, and you just gave it to your GM. The principles in that book about how we treat people have never not been the most important piece of hospitality, and they never won't be. That is what hospitality is all about. It's about creating a culture where people want to come to work. It's about creating a environment for customers where they're blown away, and it's all about what you said earlier. It's about people. It's not about product. It's not about marketing. It's not about technology. I mean, I have a technology company, but there's billions and billions of dollars that have just gone into restaurant tech. And I know you mentioned your point of sale earlier, like all that stuff's fine. Like need the tools, whatever, but like it's just a people business. Yep. And if people and you and your team, you have such a, you nailed it. And when I have somebody that has like an ice cream shop on here, they always talk about it. They're like, people come in here happy. Like you're not dealing with people that are like, come on, where's my food? I got to get back to my lunch meeting. Like, it's like they're coming there relaxed. So it's a great environment to just focus on. Let's just have great people. Your customer's already coming with a smile. Get the process right. Make, eye contact, smile, thank them, be intentional, make them feel welcome. It's almost like there's no perfect formula and there's no like guarantee that it's going to work. But my goodness, man, like selling milkshakes with the idea that it's all about the people, y'all have a great, great formula. So I totally get why the right people that really get that would want to invest into that. The simplicity and the elegance of what you're doing combined with that philosophy, dude, like well done to you and your team, man.
Thanks. No, I appreciate it. And I've been at it a long time. So we're just starting to get on people's radar. But our VP of Ops has been with us for a decade. Literally, I know we didn't really get into it in this conversation, but there's so many little details of how to make a world-class milkshake and make it efficiently. There's a reason why no one's doing what we're doing. And, we weren't ready to have this conversation at store 2 or store 4 or store 8. We continue to learn, of course, but, that's when, especially the experienced F&B people that kind of see what we're doing, and we make all of our own ice cream in-house, we make our own chocolate, the 4th generation chocolatiers, it's something you can't fake, right? And I try to, there's a lot of noise out there in the world, and then there's substance. So we're trying to stand squarely with 2 feet in the substance circle. That enables kind of a really nice long-term viewpoint where, it doesn't feel like such a race.
Oh man, I can't, you're in, let's see, you're in Durham.
Yep. Just opened in Durham. Grand opening event was last weekend, which was awesome.
And then Cary is next. Is it the same franchisee?
Yep,
I assume?
Same franchisee. Yep.
Ooh, okay. My stepmom lives in Cary. I'll be checking it out. So you got a hard stop. I'm going to let you roll. I can't wait to have one. My final question is, what is your favorite milkshake off of your menu?
It's a little bit of our dairy-free shakes are the best in the world. I've never seen anything that comes close. I know we'll get into all of that. So the good old-fashioned dairy-free cookies and cream is unbelievable. No one would ever believe it's dairy-free. But the actual favorite shake is probably a chocolate raspberry truffle shake. It's basically chocolate based with some raspberries. So our whole menu, you know, you can get the best chocolate vanilla strawberry cookies and cream shake you've ever had for the, you know, the people that just want something nice and simple. And then, you know, we go all the way up to, you know, campfire s'mores and chocolate raspberry truffle. So we've got all sorts of fun stuff, whether you're fruit or peanut butter or mint or whatever you're into. And most people come in and it's almost paradox of choice when they look at our menu and they say, "Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to come back and try this and that." So, so yeah, we have a lot of fun with it. But we call our menu the illusion of complexity because it's all made with the exact same vanilla ice cream base. So there's a lot of little secrets of our operation that keep it, you know, the customers ooh and ah, and then you get back a house and you're like, "Wait, that's it." So that's kind of the magic.
Love it, man. Dude, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to do this. What an awesome story and a great conversation and a great brand, incredible business. And I will be in touch. I go to Cary fairly frequently. So the next time if they're not open, I'll get to Durham. But congrats on that. Congrats on all the success. I will definitely let you know once I've had one and what I had. And appreciate the time. We'll get this up at probably, in a week or two. We'll have it ready. I'll send you the audio and video and MilkShake Factory. So what's the website?
It's just milkshakefactory.com.
MilkShakeFactory.com, y'all.
So check us out
Check it
there,
out.
and I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter. So find me on there and reach out directly. I try to get back to everyone if I can. And yeah, I really appreciate you having me on.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it, man.
All right.
I'll let you roll. All right. See ya.
See ya.